Carolina, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is working now. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And I've got to tell you, in sitting here and watching you be still for as many hours as you did at our age is a real test of stamina. So you have my respect. You're going to have to tell me how you do that sometime. I want to shift gears just a little bit. We talked about fraud and waste and abuse quite a bit. I'd like to turn the conversation, if we may, just for a couple of minutes to government efficiency. Through the pandemic, I have observed across all industries, because of the loss of workforce, and we could get into the reasons for that. That's a whole series of hearings, I'm sure. But every industry that I talk to seems to have been forced to reinvent itself through the pandemic, and now that the pandemic is coming to a close. And by reinvent itself, I'm talking about doing more or the same job with fewer people. In serving as an appropriations chair for the state of North Carolina immediately before I got here, it occurs to me because every state agency that was coming to me asking for their appropriation for the following year was asking for more, not less. And I'm just curious what you might be seeing, or are you in a position to comment on, has government been able in any way to reinvent itself? This Congress is on the cusp of having to make some really critical decisions to raise the debt limit, to change our spending trajectory. And I'd like to know that government is working as hard to reinvent itself and do more with less, just like every other industry out there is doing. Do you have any evidence or commentary on that observation?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd put it in the category of reinventing itself, but for 11 years now, I issue an annual report to the Congress on overlap, duplication, and fragmentation in the federal government and how to achieve cost savings and perhaps revenue enhancements. And we've issued almost 1,300 recommendations over that period of time. About half of those recommendations have been fully implemented, some partially implemented. To date, there have been financial benefits to the government of over $500 billion, $565 billion. So there are efforts underway, and there are hundreds of other GAO recommendations we have open yet that haven't been implemented that could save tens of billions of additional dollars. Right now, we probably have around 5,000 recommendations implemented. I'll be issuing that report again this spring. And we also have the high-risk list that I referenced earlier in areas in need of transformation. And that program over the last 15 years has saved $675 billion. So there are improvements being made. They're difficult to effectuate, but there's much more that could be done for government to do that. And I think congressional oversight's been key. Where there has been progress, it's been through congressional action for the big dollars.
Thank you. I'll be waiting on that report. That'll be my favorite read this spring. One other quick question. I know from chairing oversight of unemployment in North Carolina, the federal government had this process where they came back and asked for unemployment funds that had already been appropriated through a process called sequestration. Are you familiar with that? And if so, can you tell me nationwide how many dollars were sequestered, and of that, how many were actually recollected from the states?
Yeah. I'm not familiar specifically with the unemployment insurance program. The only sequestration I'm familiar with was due to the Budget Control Act of 2011. And by there, the Congress set limits on discretionary spending. And if the appropriation bills didn't come down to those levels, there was an across-the-board government cut to bring them down to those levels. That happened in 2013 2013 and 2014. And it was like equivalent of, if my memory serves me right, about 7% cut at that time.
The gentleman's
5
time
minutes
has
goes
expired.
fast. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes